Title: The Man Who Fled Silence. Chapter 1, Corrected and Sanctified Edition. Author: Hiko Zembraki J.M. Robert Andrews Mendoza. Copyright 2025 Soul Savvy Narrative Works. All rights reserved. Serial KGS-CH1-2025-001. Legal: This memoir is a testimony and spiritual narrative. It is not clinical advice. No liability is assumed for interpretation or application. Kingdom Seal: Verified for truth, integrity, and witness. Chapter 1, The Man Who Fled the Silence, the quiet that shaped him. Before the fall, before the desert, before substances carved valleys through his life, there was only the quiet. Not peaceful quiet, not contemplative stillness, but the oppressive hush that forms in families, where emotions remain unnamed and wounds go untended. He grew up in a house where the loudest sound was everything left unspoken. The silence pressed against walls, settled into carpet fibers, lived in the spaces between words. It taught him early: speak softly, feel shallowly, need nothing. This is not blame. This is lineage. Generational survival etched into nervous systems. His parents loved him in the ways they knew, but they themselves had been shaped by silence, and silence cannot birth the language of the heart. He learned to flee before he learned to stay.
I was there,
Whispers the one who sees in secret.
even when he had no name for me.
The Minneapolis years, turbulence without addiction. When he fled his childhood home from Minneapolis, he carried the unspoken ache like luggage. He couldn't set down. He longed for belonging, for voice, for a self that didn't feel like a question mark written in disappearing ink. He was unstable, yes, emotionally overwhelmed, certainly, running from silence, always. But he was not yet an addict. No substances had entered the story. No chemical had touched his bloodstream. What he carried instead was untreated trauma. Lonely nights that stretched like taffy. Friendships that burned hot and fast as matchsticks. A nervous system trained for survival rather than rest, and the unending ache to be truly seen. Twice he left Minneapolis, returning to the farm when the chaos inside grew larger than his. Tools could manage, not defeated, just exhausted. Trying, resetting, beginning again.
He did not know the difference between fleeing and being carried,
The voice whispered over him.
but I was already following.
The departure to Arizona. Eventually, the inner ache grew too large for Minnesota's soil to contain. He left for Arizona, a place he did not understand, following a pull he could not name. He arrived unstable, but not addicted. This distinction matters. Truth matters. Stories built on false timelines confuse the healing process. Comes later. He was wounded, overwhelmed, dissociated at times, but still sober within the ache. Arizona would change that. Roland, the first door to descent. In Phoenix, he met Roland. Roland was electric, charismatic in a way that felt like gravity, dangerous in a way that felt like home to someone who had never known protection. Roland was also unstable, abusive, and he carried substances the way a serpent carries venom. It was Roland, not Minneapolis, not Minnesota, who first placed methamphetamine into his hand. One offering, one invitation, one doorway. And because his nervous system had been trained since childhood to flee silence, to avoid stillness, to outrun the ache, he accepted. Not because he was weak, but because he had been running his whole life. And in Arizona, he finally ran out of places to run.
I saw him,
Says the quiet voice.
even when he could not see himself.
The descent, not in Minnesota, but in the desert. The addiction did not begin in childhood. It did not begin in Annandale. It did not begin in Minneapolis. It began in the desert, in Phoenix, in the heat, in Roland's orbit, in a life collapsing faster than he could stabilize it. The substances numbed the silence. They muted the ache. They quieted the roar. For a moment. But every high demanded its crash. Every escape carved a deeper hollow. Every dose built another prison wall. The flight from silence. He fled the quiet of his childhood home. He fled the quiet of Minneapolis. He fled the quiet in his own chest. But silence always found him, because silence is not absence. Silence is the space trauma. Fails when language has been stolen from a child too early. He mistook the roar inside for identity. He mistook shame for truth. He mistook panic for God's voice.
It was never me, the father says gently. I am not the roar. I am the whisper.
The breaking point, the child's gaze. The turning point arrived not in therapy, not in church, not in a moment of epiphany, but the instant he got into the passenger seat of the car and turned around for the first time to see them. There they were, his infant twin nieces, Noelle and Bailey, nestled together in a carrier. As he turned to face them, their eyes met his directly, clear as untouched water. They didn't judge him. They simply witnessed him. Something broke. Something opened. Something cracked. In a way that could never close. And for the first time in years, he saw himself, hollow, haunted, half dead. It was a Lazarus moment, a burning bush moment, a Samuel in the night moment. The father whispered through that child's gaze,
Come forth. This is not the end.
The return home. Within a week, he entered treatment. He left Arizona. He returned to Minnesota, but this time, he wasn't returning defeated. He was returning called. The desert had swallowed him. The child's gaze had awakened him. The father had spoken. The beginning of becoming. This is where the story truly begins. Not with addiction, not with ruin, not with the fall, but with the moment grace broke into the narrative through the eyes of two infants. The man who fled silence met the voice that breaks it, and the journey home, the real one, began.
I was there.
Jesus says about shame.
It is about me finding my son. At every step, at every fall, at every return. So the chapter closes on a note of hope. The man who once fled from silence, who carried that unspoken ache through different cities and seasons, is no longer running. Instead, he's found himself at the beginning of a true homecoming.
This first chapter sets the stage for a journey, not just of recovery, but of rediscovery, of a deeper identity and a voice found in the stillness rather than the silence. And as he steps onto this path, accompanied by faith and a newfound understanding, the real adventure of becoming truly himself begins. Title: The Man Who Fled Silence. Chapter 1, Corrected and Sanctified Edition. Author: Hiko Sombraki J.M., Robert Andrews Mendoza. Kingdom Seal Metadata. Official record. Edition: Kingdom Seal Edition, polished by Claude. Serial number KGSEH 12025-001. Legal notice: this chapter has been polished for clarity and faithfulness, without altering its truth, witness, or theological meaning. Version 1.1, corrected and sanctified. Copyright 2025, Soul Savvy Narrative Works. All rights reserved. Seal: through the fire I walk, and at his feet I kneel, in humility, always. Timestamp: November 26th, 2025.